flag was folded before Rachel Morrison had time to understand that her life had just been divided into two parts, before and after. She sat in the front row at the memorial service near Virginia Beach, Virginia, with her daughter Emma pressed against her side. Emma was 9 years old. She was wearing her good shoes, the ones Rachel had polished the night before because she needed something to do with her hands. The chapel was full of uniformed men and women, people who had served beside Senior Chief Adam Morrison, people who had trusted him, people who had followed him into places that don't appear on any public map. None of them were crying yet. But Titan was. The German shepherd sat beside the flag-draped casket with his leash held loosely by a young petty officer who had no idea what to do. Titan had not eaten in 4 days. He had not responded to commands since the night Adam died. He simply sat beside whatever remained of his partner and made a sound, low and continuous, that moved through the chapel like something physical. The honor guard stood perfectly still. Hardened sailors, men who had seen things that would hollow out ordinary people, stood with their jaws tight and their eyes bright. And then Titan pulled free, not violently, not in panic. He simply leaned forward with the full weight of his grief, and the leash slipped from the young petty officer's hand. Titan walked to the casket. He lay down beside it, pressed his body against the base, and placed his chin on his front paws. He was not going to be moved. Rachel watched this from the front row. She watched the dog who had walked beside her husband through places she could never fully picture, now refusing to leave him. She stood slowly, walked forward, and knelt on the floor beside Titan. She pressed her forehead gently against his. The chapel was completely silent. "Help me raise her," she whispered. "Please." Titan made a sound low in his chest. His eyes did not leave the casket, but he stayed beside Rachel for the rest of the service. Senior Chief Adam Morrison had been a canine handler attached to the United States Navy SEALs for 11 years. He was not loud about it. He did not speak about his deployments at dinner, did not leave classified stress scattered across the kitchen counter for his family to carry. He came home, took off his boots, put them by the door, and became a husband and a father with the same full commitment he brought to everything else. He used to say, "Titan trusts me with his life. I trust him with mine." He meant it in both directions. That was the kind of man he was. The night Adam died, he and Titan were moving ahead of their team through a narrow corridor in a compound overseas. No moonlight, complete darkness except for the green wash of night vision. Titan stopped and went rigid. He had found something. Adam knelt beside him and reached forward to signal the team back. The IED was buried shallow, pressure-triggered, positioned exactly where a handler would kneel. Adam died in less than 3 seconds. Titan was thrown back by the blast, shrapnel in his left shoulder, a ruptured eardrum. When the team reached the site, Titan was crawling back through the debris toward Adam. Not running, his back legs had not caught up with the rest of him yet, but he was going back. They had to physically carry him away. He kept trying to turn around. Titan spent 6 weeks in a military veterinary facility before Rachel drove 6 hours to bring him home. The facility veterinarian handed her a file with his medical notes, and Rachel sat in her car in the parking lot before starting the engine and read through every page. Near the bottom, in plain typed text, were the words that broke her. Dog shows signs of acute grief response, refuses food for first 4 days, responds to handler's name spoken aloud. Rachel sat with that for a long time. He had refused food for 4 days because he was waiting for Adam to come back and feed him. She started the engine. She drove 6 hours home with one hand on the wheel and one hand reaching back to rest on Titan's side. He did not sleep the whole way. He kept his eyes on the road ahead, the same way he had kept his eyes forward on every mission, watching for whatever came next. 2 months after the funeral, Rachel walked into her commanding officer's office and told him she was leaving the Navy.
He leaned back in his chair and looked at her for a long moment. "You have a future here, Morrison," he said. Rachel looked at him calmly. "My daughter is my future," she said. She left the office, changed out of uniform for the last time, and stood in the parking lot in civilian clothes, feeling more lost than she had ever felt in her life, but certain, completely certain. Emma was 9 when her father died. She was 12 when the bullying began. She was not a child who made noise about pain. She had watched her mother too closely for that. She had seen Rachel sitting at the kitchen table late at night, with unpaid bills spread out in front of her like a battle with no clear strategy. She had heard the silence that followed phone calls from the bank. She understood, with the particular clarity of children who grow up too fast, that her mother was already carrying as much as one person could carry. So Emma carried her part alone. She kept the folded flag in her closet on the shelf above her winter coats. Sometimes, late at night, she would open the closet door, sit down on the floor in front of it, and talk to her father softly. "I had a hard day, Daddy," she would say, "but I'm okay. Don't worry about me." She was not okay. At school, a boy named Ryan Caldwell started with jokes. He was wealthy, the kind of wealthy that made adults careful around him. His father had donated enough money to have his name on the school stadium. "Hero kid," Ryan called her in the hallway. "War orphan." Emma kept walking. Then one afternoon in the cafeteria, Ryan leaned across the table and said with full, deliberate cruelty, "Your dad died for nothing, you know that?" Emma did not respond. She picked up her tray and walked away, and she did not cry until she was in the bathroom with the door locked behind her, the water running so no one could hear. She never told Rachel. Widows carry enough. Rachel was finishing a shift at the marina on a Tuesday afternoon when her phone buzzed in her back pocket. She pulled it out and looked at the screen. "Mom, can you come?"
3 words, no explanation. Rachel felt it in her chest before she finished reading it. She was already walking to her truck before she had typed back a response. She arrived at the school within 20 minutes. She pushed through the front doors and moved down the main hallway, and she saw Emma before she saw anything else. Her daughter was pressed against a row of lockers at the far end of the corridor. Ryan Caldwell had one hand twisted in her hair. Around them, students stood with their phones raised. Some were laughing. Rachel walked forward. She did not run. She did not raise her voice. She moved through the crowd with the steady, contained purpose of a woman who had spent 11 years married to a man who understood how to move through dangerous spaces without creating additional chaos. She stopped 3 feet away from Ryan. "Let her go," she said. Her voice was quiet. It was not a request. Ryan released Emma's hair and took a step back, but then he leaned close to Rachel and he said something about Adam, specific words chosen for maximum damage. Rachel heard every one of them. For 1 second, just one, grief shifted inside her and became something hotter, something that moved up through her chest and into her hands. Then she heard Adam's voice, as clearly as if he were standing beside her. "Strength isn't loud, Ratch." She exhaled slowly. She put her arm around Emma's shoulders, and she walked her daughter out of that school without looking back. Titan was waiting in the truck. The moment Emma opened the rear door, Titan rose from the back seat and pushed forward. He made a sound, low and urgent, deep in his chest, the kind of sound a dog makes when every instinct is telling him something is wrong. He pressed his nose against Emma's hair, her face, her arms. He was reading her the way he had been trained to read a threat site, cataloging damage with his whole body. Emma collapsed forward into him. She buried her face in the thick fur of his neck and shook. She didn't make a sound. She just shook. And Titan, this dog who had cleared bomb sites and walked point through hostile corridors, pressed his entire body against her 12-year-old frame and went completely still. He simply absorbed her. Rachel sat in the front seat with both hands on the steering wheel and did not move the truck for a long time. That night, Rachel cleaned the bruises on Emma's arms at the bathroom sink. Neither of them spoke for a while. The house was quiet except for the sound of water running and Titan's nails on the tile floor as he moved in slow circles outside the bathroom door, unsettled, alert. Then Emma began to cry. Not the polite crying she had been doing for 3 years, something older, something that had been waiting a long time for permission. "I didn't tell you," she said, her voice breaking apart, "because I didn't want you to have to fight again. You already fight so hard, Mom, every day. I can see it." Rachel set down the washcloth. She slid down the side of the cabinet until she was sitting on the bathroom tile floor beside her daughter. She pulled Emma against her and held her. "I left the Navy," Rachel said quietly, "so I wouldn't lose you, too. Do you understand that? You are the only reason I know which direction to walk in the morning." Emma pushed her face into her mother's shoulder. Titan pushed the bathroom door open with his nose. He walked in, looked at both of them on the floor, and lay down across Emma's feet. Then, slowly, he shifted his body until he was braced against her legs, low and solid and warm. Guard position. It was the same way he had braced against Adam during storms overseas, when thunder rolled across foreign mountains and the team sheltered in whatever structure they could find. Adam had told Rachel about it once, laughing softly. "Big brave war dog is scared of thunder," he'd said, "so I let him lean on me." Now Titan was letting Emma lean on him. Rachel turned her face away from her daughter. She did not want Emma to see her cry. The principal called it teenage conflict. The responding police officer suggested that boys that age roughhouse and that it was difficult to establish intent. Ryan Caldwell's father made a phone call to someone Rachel never identified, and for 2 weeks, nothing moved. Rachel did not scream. She did not post on social media. She did not stand in the school parking lot making noise. She worked. She filed formal reports with the district. She documented every incident with dates, times, and locations. She gathered medical records. She printed every screenshot Emma had saved. She wrote detailed timelines on yellow legal pads at her kitchen table, long after Emma had gone to bed, while Titan lay stretched across her feet. Some nights she would stop writing and rest her hand on top of Titan's head, and in the silence of the house where Adam's boots still sat by the front door, she would say very quietly, "I don't know if I'm strong enough for this." Titan would lift his eyes to her face, just his eyes, steady, dark, and completely certain. "You are." 6 weeks after the hallway incident, Ryan Caldwell shoved Emma down a concrete stairwell behind the gymnasium. She hit the steps 3 times before she stopped. Concussion, sprained wrist, a cut on her chin that required 4 stitches. Rachel sat beside the hospital bed through the entire night. She did not sleep. She watched the monitor above Emma's head and listened to her daughter breathe and felt something inside herself go very, very quiet. Titan lay under the hospital bed on the cold linoleum floor. The staff had started to object, but something in Rachel's face had stopped them. He had been there for 11 hours without moving, without water, without a sound. At 3:12 in the morning, Emma whimpered. It was small, the sound a child makes when a nightmare finds the part of them that is already hurt, but Titan heard it before Rachel could stand. He rose carefully, slowly, so as not to shake the bed. He placed his front paws on the mattress with a gentleness that seemed almost impossible for an animal his size. He lowered his head until it rested on the pillow beside Emma's. He waited. Emma's fingers moved across the blanket, searching, the way a child reaches in the dark for something familiar and safe. They found his fur. They held on. Titan did not move. He did not make a sound. He simply stayed. Emma's breathing slowed. Her fingers relaxed, but they did not let go. Rachel watched all of it from the chair beside the bed. She watched the Gog who had once walked point through hostile corridors, who had once found buried explosives with nothing but his nose and his nerve, now standing motionless on a hospital mattress so that a 12-year-old girl could hold on to him in the dark. She pressed her hand over her mouth. She thought about Adam kneeling in that corridor overseas, reaching forward to signal his team back. She thought about how the last thing he did on this earth was try to protect the people behind him. Titan was doing the same thing. Different corridor, same heart. Rachel closed her eyes, and for the first time since the funeral, she allowed herself to fall apart completely, quietly, in a hospital chair at 3:12 in the morning, while the dog her husband had trusted with his life stood guard over the daughter he had left behind. The video surfaced 11 days later. A student who had been standing at the edge of the crowd that Tuesday in the hallway had recorded the full incident from a different angle than the others. The footage was clear. It was undeniable. Other parents came forward. There had been other incidents, other children, other silences that had been kept because Ryan Caldwell's father had a name on a building. The medical records from the stairwell could not be dismissed. Ryan Caldwell was expelled and formally charged. The district launched an administrative review that ultimately resulted in 3 staff members facing disciplinary action for failure to respond appropriately to documented complaints. The stadium was quietly renamed. There was no celebration in the Morrison house. Rachel did not feel victorious. She felt tired, the way you feel after carrying something very heavy for a very long time and finally being allowed to set it down. She sat on the porch that evening with Titan beside her and a cup of coffee that went cold in her hand. "We did it," she said to him softly. Titan rested his chin on her knee. 6 months later, on a clear morning in late May, Rachel and Emma drove to Arlington National Cemetery. They walked together through the rows of white headstones, Titan moving between them on a loose leash, his head low and his pace slow, as though he understood exactly where he was and exactly why. They found the section they were looking for. Rachel carried fresh roses. Emma carried her father's old challenge coin, the one that had sat on his nightstand for 11 years, the one she had taken from the drawer the morning after the funeral and kept in her jacket pocket every day since. They stood together for a while without speaking. The wind moved through the trees above them, slow and steady, and the rows of white headstones stretched away in every direction, each one a name, each name a story, each story a family that understood exactly what this felt like. Titan lay down between them on the grass. Rachel spoke first. "I kept her safe, Adam," she said. Her voice was steady. "I kept her safe." Emma swallowed hard. She looked at the headstone for a long moment, and then she said, "I tried to be brave like you, Daddy. I'm still trying." Titan lowered his chin to the grass. He lay exactly as he had lain beside the flag-draped casket 3 years before, heavy and still and present, the last living witness to everything Adam Morrison had been. The wind moved again. Rachel reached down and took Emma's hand. That evening, back on their small porch in Norfolk, Emma leaned against her mother's side the way she used to lean against her when she was very small. Titan lay stretched across both their feet, warm and solid and immovable. Rachel looked up at the stars above the roofline, at the same sky she had looked at on 100 nights when Adam was deployed and she was counting the days.
"We're still standing," she said softly. Emma said nothing. She just leaned in closer. And for the first time since the funeral, the house behind them did not feel so quiet. It felt like something had shifted, something small and permanent, like a window opening after a very long winter. Adam Morrison gave everything he had to the people behind him. He did it overseas, in the dark, without recognition. Rachel Morrison gave everything she had to the daughter in front of her. She did it quietly, without applause, without anyone telling her she was strong enough. And Titan, a dog who never received an explanation for any of it, simply chose the people Adam loved and refused to leave them. Some kinds of courage do not look like a medal. They look like a woman sitting on a bathroom floor holding her daughter. They look like a dog lying under a hospital bed at 3 in the morning. They look like getting up every day in a house that is too quiet and choosing, again, to keep going. That is what this family did. That is what so many military families across this country do, in silence, without recognition, every single day. If their story moved something in you, honor it, share it, make sure it reaches someone who needs to hear it. And if you haven't yet joined this community, subscribe. Deserve to be told, and the families behind them deserve to be remembered. We'll be here.